Well, we've got some pretty big swings back and forward between temperature, settle conditions, stormy conditions, and it looks as if that's going to continue for the next wee while or so. Thanks for clicking on to the Monday edition of Vogan's European Outlook. Please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. I do appreciate that. And this is 850 temperatures off the GFS, and you can see that we are about to wipe out the mild conditions that we've had over the Easter weekend. Temperatures rose to 17.1 Celsius, I think, yesterday. That was the highest of the weekend, a little bit below what I expected. I actually thought we may have seen an 18 somewhere, but we failed to do so, and therefore we did not have the warmest day of the year to date. But there is indications towards the upcoming weekend we may get close to 20 Celsius for the first time this year so far. So as you can see here, that we do have the milder now starting to get pushed to the east. We've got an area of very significant cold coming out of eastern Canada, getting wrapped in around this area of low pressure just to the south of Greenland here, out over the Atlantic. But watch what happens. The cold air is significantly eroded as it crosses over a warmer than average North Atlantic Ocean, of course. So areas of low pressure associated with the jet stream, a pretty strong jet stream at that, may I add. Between the mild to the south and the cold to the north, we've got a very strong jet, and that is helping push out the area of high pressure that we've had, the warmer, and indeed we're going to introduce wind and rain to the mix over the next few days. We do have yellow warnings out for wind across parts of Northern Ireland and the Republic, as well as Wales and southwestern England also could see gusts in excess of 60 mile an hour in exposed areas of Wales, England, southeast, southwestern portions of England could see gusts in excess of 70 miles per hour, especially down along the Cornwall and Devon coastline. We could see it along the South Wales coast also. Parts of Ireland may see that, and even up into the northwest of England, so along the Cumbrian coast. Southwestern Scotland also may get in on some of those very strong gusts of wind also. But big temperature drop, rather than 14 to 16 Celsius fairly widely. We are going to see the temperature come down. We are going to also see the return of hill snow, by the way, as colder air gets wrapped in around this circulation. We'll look at that in a little bit more detail in a second, but you can see the cold air getting pulled in originally from Canada all the way across the Atlantic and into the British Isles and Ireland also. So it's going to feel distinctly colder than it has been of late, during Tuesday and indeed Wednesday, especially in the wind. It will feel rather raw out there, and then that cold air gets kind of cycled around that circulation, and precipitation will change over to snowfall across the northern half of the British Isles here. All the while, during the middle portion of this week, while it's chilly, it's showery, and temperatures are subdued, you can see here this area of low pressure over the western North Atlantic, milder associated with that getting lifted north ahead of that circulation. That is going to be the air mass that we tap into as we progress towards the weekend. So you can see here this area of warmer air getting lifted up into the British Isles during the course of the weekend here, and in the early portions of next week we could see the first 20 Celsius of the year, of course, and we could see some very significant warmth up in Iberia as well, according to this latest run in the GFS at least anyway. So let's look at the overview chart and see what the model is indicating. So back to the current period, of course, we had a spell of fairly heavy rainfall across many parts of the British Isles in the last few hours or so. That is now clearing out. We are left in a kind of blustery, showery regime, and we could see some hail, thunder, lightning associated with them showers as the rattling, but a fresh air mass in place. Plenty of incoming solar radiation, of course, allowing the temperatures to warm up at the surface. You've got that increased instability during the late morning and afternoon hours, of course, at this time of the year. And then it's all eyes on this feature here, developing and deepening as we progress into the middle portion of tomorrow and into the second half of the day. we've got this shield of moisture bringing a spell of fairly heavy persistent rainfall. You notice here, even at this stage, this is into the early evening tomorrow night, we've got that precipitation changing over to snow over the higher ground of Scotland, as you can see here. But all the while, winds are going to continue to strengthen across all areas of the UK, but primarily, especially across coastal areas of Ireland, England, and Wales. We could see some, like I say, 60, 70 plus mile per hour gusts. That area of low pressure kind of spins around, as you can see here, kind of pivoting around an upper level trough, and that means that it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to kind of just rattle through in a matter of hours. It actually kind of gets caught with an area of high pressure to the east, so it kind of bounces around that area that it's not got anywhere to go. So we're going to have a spell of fairly unsettled conditions through the next few days, actually, before that system eventually clears out. We've got another feature that moves in across Southern Ireland, England, Wales. The majority of England, Wales, and Ireland gets in the heavy precipitation. The latest one in the GFS indicates the north of the British Isles stays largely free of any heavy rainfall. But of course, there's room for chopping and changing as we progress towards the period. Then the second half of the weekend, we've got that big circulation, that area of low pressure out over the Atlantic. That is the perfect setup to allow milder air from the Azores, from Africa, to get lifted north. And it looks as if we're going to see that by the time we progress through the course of the upcoming weekend here. We could see some very warm temperatures indeed across Spain, Portugal, and southern France. And you can see that we're largely in a fairly quiet regime towards the middle portion of next week. So, strongest winds, like I said, this is off the GFS. This is the peak wind gust in kilometres per hour. And you can see here the Southern Ireland coastline through the Irish Sea, South Wales up through the Bristol Channel, south coast of England, through the English Channel, and even across the North Sea could see some very strong gusty winds in exposure here. The majority of the strongest winds are across England, Wales, and Ireland, Northern Ireland, and only the southwestern portion of Scotland looks as if it's going to have significant gusts of wind associated with this area of low pressure. Rainfall wise, this is total accumulated precipitation. You can see here that we've got the rain over the last few hours across the bulk of England, Wales, and northern Scotland. You notice here we've got a lack of rainfall through the A90 corridor between Dundee and Aberdeen. Very, very little in the way of rainfall at all. Bit of a rain shadow effect going on here. And then as we progress through the course of tomorrow and the Wednesday here, this is that area of low pressure bringing its spell of heavy rainfall and, of course, hill snow as well. Notice here the heaviest precip across the western and northern portion of the Republic, Northern Ireland, southwestern Scotland, up the west coast, and indeed England. Wales is going to be in bullseye, as well as Cumbria. Less rain, not completely dry, but less rain to the east of the Pennines, as you can see here. We've got heavy precipitation over eastern Scotland, but that's because the moisture is getting circulated around that area of low pressure, of course. So we don't have just a focus on exposed hills of the west. Snowfall wise, you can see here that the GFS does have snow and a relatively decent little covering, I think, for a period of time during the latter portion of tomorrow and into Wednesday in particular. We could see accumulating snow, especially during the overnight period when we've got the darkness and the column is naturally colder. Very, very difficult to get accumulating snow at this time of the year in daylight hours, of course, with the strength of the sun. But certainly over the hills of the Highlands, southern uplands, parts of Cumbrian Fells, and even Northern Ireland. You can see here that southern and western portions of Northern Ireland actually gets in some of the action as well, as per the model anyway. Let's actually have a look at that here. So this is the England and Ireland chart here. So you can see here parts of the Northern Republic as well as southern portions of Northern Ireland may see a little bit of a covering for a short period of time, and nothing for the bulk of England and Wales, as you can see here. Looking at the Mann-Julian oscillation, it's been a wee while since I've spoken about this, but what could be interesting is some of the models are indicating that we have a potential surge of warmth, significant warmth at that. How significant? Possibly into the low 20s, and this was actually touched on in the forecast for the April outlook. If you do check it out, I do mention that during the second half of the month, we have an increased chance at seeing a surge of warmth that could lift the temperatures into the 20s. Now, what may happen is that the Manchu-Lunar Oscillation is progressing as per the GFS model through the Western Pacific, Africa, and then possibly if it gets into the Indian Ocean, say in the next 10 days or so, what may happen is this is the kind of phases that would typically bring mild conditions during the winter months. These phases can then correlate to higher pressure and warmer conditions during the spring and indeed the early summer. So if the Manchu-Lunar Oscillation can progress through phases 7, 8 into 1, and then into phase 2 and 3, 4 and 5, that would certainly increase the chance of seeing warmer conditions towards the end of the month. So we'll watch this space, certainly. There is some interesting things going on with regards to the modelling, however, because if we go back to the GFS overview chart, we continue to play through this loop. What ends up taking place is that there's another Scandinavian high that seems to develop here. And what happens is it's seeing the southward displacement of low pressure once again. So is this still the drip effect of the major SSW? It might surprise you. You're saying to yourself, that's weeks and weeks ago, Mark. Why would that still be having an impact? Believe it or not, it can have. And this is certainly quite interesting. Because what would happen here would be it would actually start to have the buildup of higher pressure further north yet again, disturbed weather, low pressure further south, as you can see here, and this would correlate to some fresher air getting drawn underneath this area of high pressure and into the British Isles, and certainly that would go against what I'm talking about with regards to a warm surge at the end of the month. This is the problem. Models are very, very foggy when it comes to the latter stages of this month here. It could go either way. We could go into a warm surge, or we could go quite the opposite. We may have extremes back and forth between very warm days versus cold and average days. It's going to feel cold in the next couple of days with that wind blowing, that's for sure. But watch this here. You can see here that in comes that colder, fresher air from the Atlantic with that area of low pressure. We're going to see hill snow, of course, across the north. Very warm conditions elsewhere. But look at that, there's a fairly chilly regime over the UK and Ireland, even into the southwestern portions of Iberia. Then, as you can see here, we start to see the air mass warming up. So this is up towards the second half of the upcoming weekend and into early next week. See here some significant warmth across Iberia, across France, and indeed across the British Isles, what could be knocking the door of 20 Celsius, even in Scotland, during the early portion of next week. With an area of low pressure getting stuck to the west of the UK, we'll have that warm air coming up from Africa. But watch this space, it then disappears once again. We've got another surge of cold. This is that area of high pressure to the north, transporting cold and normal air through Central Europe and into the British Isles here, Ireland, back into France. So this big swing between warm and cold looks as if the models are kind of honing in on that idea. But, a couple of model runs down the line may have this completely disappeared. We may have a heat wave on our hands. So we'll watch this space. Certainly there's a lot of things going on. So keep it right here on my YouTube channel. Do check out MarkVoganWeather for all the content. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter for daily weather updates. And of course, hit the subscribe button. Stay tuned. Plenty of things going on at the moment, so don't miss out on anything. Hope you enjoy the rest of your Easter Monday. Bye for now.